What is good, people? Welcome back to another video. Now today's video is a very special one because today on the 4th of July we celebrate 10 years of driving. That is right, I am showing my age now. 10 years of driving. We're just going to be talking through all my experiences, the cars I've owned, what I've done to them, little stories here and there, and hopefully you guys do enjoy this video. If you do, give it a like and subscribe, and hopefully you guys are enjoying the 2 uploads a week. It is a lot of work. Hopefully it pays off in the end, and hopefully you guys are enjoying it either way. So let's get on to the videos. The first car I owned was not a Volkswagen. Shock. It was actually a Peugeot. When I passed my test, I wanted a Volkswagen. I wanted a Polo. This was before I even got into Volkswagens. I already wanted one. Sadly couldn't afford one, so I had to settle for a Peugeot 106. I remember going up there, it was in Derby, it wasn't far from where I lived. And I remember taking my mum, my sister's boyfriend, and I'm sure there was someone else. My heart was beating like crazy to get my first car. Paid 860 quid for it. It was a 2001 Peugeot 106. It had the 1.1 litre engine. It was so slow. And at the time, I thought I got a bargain of a car because it was 860 quid and it had 46,000 miles on the clock. It didn't. Later on in my ownership, I did some MOT history background checks on it, and the previous MOT before I bought it was 90,000 which means that someone had clocked the miles and not told me about it, which some people will be quite angry about. But at the time I was quite proud of the car because, you know, the French cars get a really bad reputation of being unreliable and stuff like that, and all I did on that car was put a clutch and a gearbox on it. For 96,000 miles, it's not too bad. During my time of the ownership of that car, I think the first modification for that car was some GTI wheels. What did they call them? Raptors. I believe they were called Raptors. And I bought them off a friend of mine. We put smoke rear lights on it. We did the bonnet bra. The bonnet bra was bought from where I live now, fun fact. We bought the VTS levers. We then got a lowered rear axle. I never really got around to fitting it, but I did lower the front. It's quite stupid, but don't lower just the front of the car, it's hideous. But that car was honest, and I didn't think it looked too bad for a crazy 18-year-old. But things come to an end. I sold that to a friend of mine. I went and got something different because I started to get quite heavily into the French scene. I was really invested in having a really nice French car, which sounds weird me saying that. So we ended up getting a Peugeot 306 diesel. I think it was on Gumtree for about 550 quid. The guy came up and delivered it, and honestly that car was absolutely amazing. It was retro, it was nippy for what it was. I mean, it only had 90 horsepower, but I was 19 at the time. I was loving life. It was a bigger car. It was a 1995, I believe, so it is the phase 1 model, which is the more desirable of the lot now. We've changed the wheels twice. We put the GTI Cyclones on, then we put the 205 speed lines on it. We lowered the back but not the front, so kind of we've now flipped it. We bought the rear axle for that car that was lowered with the Bilstein shocks rear disc conversion. Funny story with that car, there was a lad that was dead popular with French cars, and he knew his stuff. I went to Derby for him to fit it, and the car was in gear and on jack stands. Now my phone was getting really low on battery, so I went in the car to charge it, turned the key on, and I accidentally cranked it. But because it's in gear, the front end was still on the floor, so it's tried to drive off. The car jumped off its axle stands. The whole car is sat on the discs now. It crushed the axle stands on the way down. It was a terrible idea. Later on, I was driving the car and the brake pedal went to the floor. It went really spongy, and I went home and had a look. The brake pads fell out, and then the piston had gone so far that it digged a massive groove into the disc, and I ended up having to buy all new disc pads. Towards the end of the ownership, I was getting quite bored. I was just looking on eBay just for what the next purchase could be, and I come across a Dragon Green Mark III Golf GTI 5-door, and I read the description. I went straight to the bottom looking for a diesel, so I sent him a message. I went, you know, do you fancy a swap? He came up and he honestly ripped me off. He was an older lad, I was a young lad. I really wanted this car. He basically took advantage of me. He wanted a full tank of fuel, he wanted to take all my wheels, and I ended up doing it because I liked the car. I think I changed the window regulator, test fitted some wheels, changed the wheels once, and then that was pretty much it on the outside. Now this car is always special to me because it was the first Volkswagen I ever owned, and that was the car that was responsible for the bug that I have now. And that is the reason why I have two Mark IIIs now, because I absolutely love the car. They're great value for money. People, the Mark 1s and 2 owners, always slate them for being ugly and fat and whatever, but I like them. So I was on a motorway coming off on the slip road. I was going to buy a set of Team Dynamics wheels. I even remember the wheels. It said max speed of 30 on this off ramp. Normally they're about 50. So I, you know, young lad, obviously turned my nose up to it. I carried on going at about 50 miles an hour and was going around this corner, and it started drifting. The back end completely lost grip, and now we're in a drift round a corner on a motorway on a front wheel drive car. That is not the best place to be. So I do what you're supposed to do in a drift, is you steer into it to kind of counteract it. However, the front end then gripped again, and then we ended up swinging into the barrier. I smashed the wing, front light, and I believe that was it. During this time, my financial status was poor, was very poor. That car could have cost about 80 quid to repair. I was not in any state to repair it. So then we sold it to a lad who was breaking them, and I said farewell to my first Volkswagen. The next car I bought was a 6N2 Polo. Now, that was a 1.416 valve, and it had the uncommon 100 brake engine, which later on I found out they normally come in a 75 horsepower. I paid about $495 for it, I think, at the time, and I said that was going to be a sensible daily. I wasn't going to touch it, I wasn't going to modify it in any way, and then 2 days later we lowered it. It was low, proper low car. I never once had real bad problems until one day I was driving into Toby Carvery, and I forgot, because I had a full car, went over a speed bump, but it's not your typical speed bumps you see on the road. It's the ones that are really aggressive and short, so they're like you have to go over really slow. I went over it, drove off, and the car sounded extremely loud for what it's supposed to be. So I got under the car and the whole exhaust was pulled straight off. So it was pretty much coming straight out the downpipe. It was so loud. I had to drive home like that and then drive to the garage like that. All these stories are so funny thinking back now, and at the time it really wasn't. Which leads me on to the next car. Mark II Golf GTI. This is one of my most meaningful cars. So the car meant a lot to me because I'd spent loads of time and effort on it. I just got my first motor trade job. It was a tyre fitter, but I was, you know, things were starting to look decent, and it was up for £500. Now, thinking now, a Mark II Golf for £500 that's got MOT on it, unheard of. Me and my mate went straight down, talked him down to 475. So that was a 188 valve GTI, and I always remember the colour, Capri green. It was such a nice colour, and apparently they only did that for the big bumpy years. So I think you could only get it 89/90, 91, and then 92. It's a lovely colour. I spent so much money on it. I'd done bumpers, I'd changed wheels multiple times, I'd changed the front end to a single light grille. Someone then damaged my bumper, so then we put new bumpers on it. We did new gear knob, new gator. Honestly, so much work on it. I didn't pay a lot of money for it. The insurance wasn't too expensive, but then the sad reality is it kept breaking down, things kept going wrong with it, and I wasn't confident enough to repair it on my own. Because I was driving so far to work, I didn't have the time or the confidence to do it. So I made one of the biggest mistakes of my car history, and I swapped it for a Polo 9N 2005. Was not my proudest moment, however, I did really need something reliable. The Polo again was something that was supposed to be a sensible daily, and what does Lewis do? Completely slams it 6 days later. Sweet. When we lowered it, we took the helpers out first, and then that's where we got the photo from. And then I was driving down the road with some speed bumps, and the whole underside, all the plastics and that were cracking and snapping. and I didn't want to drive like that. So I took the helpers off and just carried on driving at its lowest setting. I changed the wheels once to some Bora Sports. I did test fit some Schmitz and my Lincoln wheels temporarily, just as a test fit, just to see what they look like. You know what? I'm not a fan of this new car life. During the time of ownership of this car, I bought a Mark 1 Caddy pickup, and that was going to be what the Cabby is now. It was going to be like a slow project. I was going to pay somebody to do it because I had no confidence or anything to do it myself. I spoke to the guy, you know, I said, look, if you do it for me, I'll pay you for it, but I'd like to come on the weekends and help out, get a bit of experience. He agreed, but plans did not go to plan after that. A little bit of violence was involved, not from me, I was the victim of it, but anyway, we don't need to get involved with that. We ended up taking the car, we was going to do a 20 valve swap with it, and then I was and ahhing what I wanted to do with it, and then I ended up selling it and just kind of giving up. It was just bad vibes all around, which then moves on to the second Mark III Golf I owned, which was an estate model. It was a 1.8 1997. I can't remember the colour. I want to say it was like chili red. It was like a burgundy red colour, and I bought that car already modified. It had all of the work done to it. Fun fact, actually, that was the first car I ever wrapped, and that was 2015, I want to say, so 6 years ago. Did my first wrap job. I did all the headlining, pillars, did all the boot trims, everything. It wasn't great, but it was the first car I felt dead accomplished. I was coming back from Leicester at a really, really awkward time. It was 5 in the morning and I had a blowout. I was switching lanes and I drove over a cat's eye, and I heard just a really loud, it was the tyre rubbing the hell out of the coilovers. So I pulled over and the whole sidewall had completely split along itself, and I'm just sat there in the middle of nowhere in Leicester at 5 AM thinking, who the hell is going to save me? I was parked quite an awkward place, so I pushed the car to somewhere a bit safer, put my hazards on. Literally, I was just waiting for somebody to help. I think I was waving people for some help. And if you're watching this, lad, a guy come up in an MG ZR. I think it was a ZR, forgive me, it was a long time ago. This guy come up, you know, checked if everything was okay, borrowed me a jack, helped me switch the wheels over. Luckily, I still had a spare wheel. One of the previous owners before me must have used the jack in this car and not put it back. And then I'd gone to jack the car up and I realised, well, I can't. I've got a wheel, but I've got no other way of jacking the car up. So yeah, this lad helped me out. Massive shout out to this guy. If you're watching this, somehow, let me know how you got on. This guy was going to work at 5 AM and he stopped to help me out, and yeah, I'll never forget that. It was a really nice moment. It was a scary moment. And then we move on to where this story starts to get a little bit interesting. Around this time, my granddad had passed and he left us with some money. And I said to myself, I want to buy a nice car and I want to start a business. We bought the car first. It wasn't my best choice of car, put it that way. If you're unfamiliar with the Jettas, this was actually a European only model. So you couldn't get the 2 doors in the UK, they never built them. And the car, I just wanted it, I wanted it. It had the 16 valve KR engine swap. It was white, had widened arches, and they were metal as well, so they're properly fabricated. It had some nice ball bay wheels on it. It was a small bumper. I think it was a 1984 or 1985. Driving it home, and within 20 minutes of me driving, I'd already curbed the wheels off. Because it was a left-hand drive car, the car was more to the right. The next day, buzzing, ready to go to work. Kept doing it, would not start for the life of it. So I'm scratching my head trying to figure out how and why is this car now not starting after it was okay yesterday. After a year or so sat on the drive, I took wiring out, tried to rectify it. The person who relocated the battery to the boot did an absolutely awful job. They didn't even fuse it. So I was trying to undo all the bad work that the previous owners had done. Because the engine was from a right-hand drive car, all the loom was extra long, if that makes sense. So I was trying to go through it or cut it down. I ended up selling the car for a set of, well, 2 sets of wheels. We then move on to the next car. This car, for me, I don't like talking about a lot because it was full of problems. just experiences with other people, and it was just a terrible time, mentally, financially, everything. I wanted to start refurbishing wheels. So what I wanted to do is have a show car, do the wheels myself, take it to shows, whatnot. Things are already done. The day after I bought the car, it broke down. So this is now the second Volkswagen Jetta Coupe I've bought has broke down the next day I've bought it. That is pretty much all I want to say on this car. There's been quite a lot of people that got involved with the build, and let's just say things didn't really go to plan. I don't want to bring any limelight to the people or mention any of their names because I cannot be asked for the arguments, hate, blah blah blah. There was one person that I do want to shine the light to. His name is Adam. I can't remember his last name. I think it's Luquette. And he's done work for Car Throttle. So shout out to him. He actually helped do all the wiring on the car. Sold the car, lost a ton of money on it. At this time, while the car's been off-road, bearing in mind this car's now been off-road for roughly, I don't know, maybe 6 to 8 months, somewhere around there. A friend of mine at the time had borrowed me a car, which I really do appreciate. This was a Polo 6N. It had done about 50k. It was a dead good dealer. It was a 148 valve, and I absolutely went insane on the interior wrap job with it. Just look at the photos. This was the car that started this channel off. So if you go back to my first videos, just have a look now, you'll see the Polo, and you'll see, I think a couple of videos I did actually film it and show you a little bit of tutorials. The videos were terrible, alright, so don't judge me on that. It wasn't a car that I wanted, so I started looking for other cars. The green Golf Estate came up, completely standard. It was up for £600. It was in the colour I wanted. It was a GL spec, so it was high spec, and it had an aircon. Everything was ticking boxes everywhere. I took my girlfriend at this point, and I was in the car. I says, just let me have a think about it, mate. I want to go and tell my girlfriend what I think about it. And she just says, just buy it. And I was like, okay, cool. And from that moment, I haven't looked back since. During the transition of me looking to buy a car, me actually buying a car, my mental health was a little bit hit and miss at that point. And I said to my girlfriend that I need a sensible daily that's not going to take my money, that's just going to let me breathe for a little bit, because I was just recovering from a few financial difficulties. The car did exactly that. It may have broke down once or twice, which was later on discovered to be crank sensor, which is a dead common fault. Connor came round and helped me out, so a massive shout out to Connor. I really do appreciate that. That's the only time the car's broken down. Touch wood. It's been amazing. You guys have seen all the work we've done on it. 2.5 years of pure memories, laughter, changing car parts, making the car look completely different. And then we crashed it. Yeah. That is the second Dragon Green Mark III Golf 5-door with an AGG 2-litre 8-valve engine. What the hell? So when I was looking for cabbies, I said I don't want a Dragon Green one, I don't want a black one. That was the reason. I did not want to buy a third Dragon Green car and crash it. No way. And they were coming up as 2 litres as well. As I said, I don't want it. I can't do it. I don't want to jinx myself with that. And that leads us on to the Golf Cabbie, people. I am so happy I bought this car. It's been laughter and smiles all round. I bought it at the perfect time because the weather is absolutely amazing. I've had such a good response from this car as well, from family and friends saying that it's a good car, it's nice, they like the colour, apart from my mum. I believe the Cabbie for me will pick off where the Golf Estate left for the channel. So it started off with, I don't know, I think I had about 80 subscribers, and now we're on nearly 1700. It's crazy. And the car is here, people. So in total, we've had 13 cars, 9 Volkswagens. It's a 98, the Estate is a 97. What more do you need to know? We've had 1,000,005 memories, breaking down, fitting parts, meeting new people, going to buy car parts, going to car shows. Unbelievable experience. I'm so glad I passed my test. And I can't believe it's been 10 years today. That's unreal. Hopefully the next 10 years is even better. Hopefully the next 10 years isn't as bad luck with cars, and hopefully the next 10 years the cars are bigger, faster and lower. If you guys did enjoy this video, give it a like and subscribe, and make sure you come back on a Wednesday and Sunday for another upload. Peace!